Here we go.
Yes, yes. Hey, first of all, how are you? And thank you for taking some time to talk to me.
Yes, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, Brazil is a very hot country, but I think I can do it.
Okay.
Are you looking forward to playing Brazil again for the second time?
Yes, yes, of course. You know, I love Brazil, and our last experience was very, very positive. So I'm very much, as well as the other guys, we're very much looking forward to coming down.
Yeah, Brazil has a strong stoner rock scene. In fact, there are several stoner rock duos here. What kind of impressions has the Brazilian scene, left on you?
Well, to be perfectly honest, uh, I'm not fully aware of how stoner rock, where it's at and what it's doing. Um, I'm hyper focused on just kind of what's in front of me, but I do know that it has grown quite a bit, and it's exciting to know that this music is growing, and it's inspiring others to get bands together and do their own thing. I mean, that's fantastic.
I knew that you wanted to experiment something with some Brazilian, bands or artists.
Um, yeah, I'm always open to collaboration, and if I meet other musicians or artists that I feel are inspiring for me, and they're curious and want to put something together, I'm always open to suggestion, and you know, I just go with the flow. You never know.
Is the concert you're gonna do here in Brazil be focused on your latest album?
No, I never focus on a particular record. I have many records, um, and I kind of look at my recording art as a little bit different than my performing art. I'll be focusing on just songs throughout my catalog, and there's songs that this particular band, the trio, really sinks their teeth into, that we enjoy playing, um, that evolved real organically within this chemistry. That's what we'll be focusing on, is those songs. But even though I had a new record out um, in 22, we won't just be playing that material. We'll be playing stuff off of everything.
You described your latest album, Bougainvillea Suite, as bitter sweet, but I thought this album less bitter than the previous one from 2020. It was your first solo album after the pandemic time, and I know it was your last album you recorded on your Joshua Tree studio, and that it meant a lot to you. So, how did all this impact you when you writing the songs for Bougainvillea Suite?
Well, I was going through a lot during the creative process of that record. Yeah, I didn't know it at the time, but it would be the last record I would record at my longtime studio in Joshua Tree. I was in the beginning stages of what would ultimately be a divorce, and obviously I was, like everybody else, trying to repair from the pandemic. But life goes on, and the show must go on, and uh, Bougainvillea Suite is the sound and and the song of those experiences for me, and you just got to get through it. But I stand by the record. I think it's a good record, and it's very honest in that way, you know. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, this doesn't sound like so down, like you are saying that all the stuff you went through, but there's a very unique sound on this record. It's special. I think there's something optimistic in this album to me.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I think the common thread through probably all the songs and all the music that I create on my own, um, is the thread of optimism. I mean, because in the end, that's really all we have. And I know that there's the old saying, hope is as hollow as fear. But, you know, I think it's important that we wake up every day knowing there's going to be struggle, and we just do the best we can, and regardless, hope for the best. And I'm an optimist by nature. I don't expect my life to be easy and perfect, nor anyone else's, but we just do the best we can. And I think that's reflected in all of my music. You know, I mean, that's what blues music is. You know, and even though I don't play what might be considered traditional blues, I don't know too many people who do. But the blues is at the core of what I play and what I've always created as a musician. The blues is in my blood, and that's essentially what blues is. It's the sound of hardship, but it's also the intention of we're just going to keep trucking along. You know, we'll get through it.
Oh, really? The blues? I'm curious. How did you end up going back in time? Of course, how did you end up going to the direction of what became known as stoner rock, which is heavier than blues? You know, even the blues rock.
Well, I guess it depends on who you talk to, but for me, I think for me, the origin of stoner rock is, I mean, let's start with rock and roll, okay, or just rock music in general. Rolling Stones and the Beatles, and these bands, they listen to Chuck Berry and they listen to Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, and those artists were the direct inspiration and link for them to form bands and create their version of that music, which would go on to become rock in the late 60s, mid to late 60s. For stoner rock, those initial seeds, if you will, would have been bands like, in particular, it'd be like Black Sabbath. In the mid 80s, no one was listening to Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath in the mid 80s was as rare as Howlin' Wolf in the mid 60s. Black Sabbath was a throwback to the early 70s. The early 70s was a smelly time. In the 80s was all about getting away from the 70s as fast as possible. But the 80s went in a direction that a lot of us, me in particular, didn't really care for. I went deeper and deeper into underground music in the 80s, but I was simultaneously being inspired to be a musician. A lot of that stemmed from the music that I was being inspired by, which was DIY hardcore punk rock. But you can even hear the beginning of the return to heavy rock in bands like Black Sabbath. I'm sorry, Black Flag, in the mid 80s, even earlier, in the early 80s. And as a kid, I noticed that, and Black Flag was starting to grow their hair long and stuff, and I thought, what are they listening? Oh, they're getting into Black Sabbath. I'm going to check out Black Sabbath. And once I heard Black Sabbath, it was like I saw the light. So as far as my participation and my interpretation of what stoner rock is, it's the continuation of what Black Sabbath was doing. And then we went on to discover other bands, like Cactus and Captain Beyond and other great 70s rock bands. But I think stoner rock, Blue Cheer, of course, I think it begins with Black Sabbath myself.
Yeah, Captain Beyond is a fantastic, obscure band, you know. And the debut, the Black Sabbath debut, is a very bluesy record. It's a heavy metal bluesy or bluesy heavy metal record. It's a great
Yeah,
one.
and very jazzy too. You know,
Jazzy, yeah.
jazz is a very important part of
Yeah, Bill Ward has a very jazzy feel, you know, swing.
yes, absolutely.
You know, Brent, in a way, do you feel proud or maybe happy to have been self-taught in music?
Well, you know, I feel accomplished. You know, I music touched me as a young person, and it inspired me, and I followed my heart into it. And I had a passion and a love, and I never gave up on it, and it never gave up on me. And so I feel good about uh, committing my life to what I felt was worth committing to. And it's not only being a musician, but being an artist and committing to a life doing something I believe in, you know? And when you believe in something and you're committed to it, you do what you have to do to fulfill that commitment. And that's what I've done. And you accept the results of that commitment. Um, and you just rock and roll down the road, which is what I've done, you know. And I'm very grateful for what music has brought to my life and the experiences, and yeah. So, I mean, sometimes some days are happier than others, and you know, pride is a slippery slope. I I don't rest on my accomplishments. You know, you're only as good as your last gig. Um, but I do, you know, I'm at my age now. I I do feel accomplished. You know, so
Yeah, and this journey you're describing me, this made you a very influential artist, a very influential figure worldwide. So how do you deal with the fact of being an idol to so many people worldwide? Does this mean a responsibility for you?
well, I think anyone who picks up an instrument and gets up on stage and sings a song has a responsibility, whether they're aware of it or not. Um, because what you're suggesting is, hey, I'm going to be creative and I'm going to express myself. And if I'm on a stage, the intention is that there's a desire or a need or a want or a request that someone or somebody listen to you. And if you're asking for people's attention, there comes a responsibility because no one wants their time wasted. And so, yes, I do have a responsibility, and I've recognized that responsibility long ago. And, you know, as far as people, uh, I don't know the word you used, idolized or look or inspired. I just like to think of people being inspired. You know, um, I don't. I'm not super comfortable with adoration, and I certainly wouldn't be comfortable with people idolizing me. Um, I'm not. I'm not. If indeed that's a fact, I'm not criticizing that, but that's not necessarily something that's well. It's not something that makes me comfortable. But to inspire people, well, that's just part of my job and part of my intention, just the same way I was inspired by artists and bands that I grew up with. And some of those bands and artists that inspired me as a young musician are actually dear friends of mine now. And, you know, so it's part of the process of keeping the music alive, the lifestyle alive. You know, I'm just doing my part. And if youngsters hear or see what I do and it inspires them to follow their heart, that's fantastic.
Yeah, you know, speaking of this being an idol thing, you know, sometimes I think your persona as a kind of anti-hero of rock, you know, but in a positive and respectful way, of course, you know, because you're not so you're not the kind of a pop idol, if you know what I mean, you know, but you're still a hero for many fans, many guitar players, many drummers, you know, worldwide. Do you feel like an anti-hero?
I've never heard that term used before in describing me. It's interesting. But I've never heard it before, but I fully understand what you're saying. And it's interesting. I'm going to have to process that. But I think anti-heroes, you know, are just subject to a particular time and place, almost fulfilling a type of necessary balance, you know. And you know, when Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and Paul McCartney and John Lennon were youngsters getting into music, I mean, with the exception of Sinatra and maybe Elvis, rock stars didn't exist. There was no such thing. They were like astronauts. They had no idea where they were going. But by the time I was a youngster in the mid 80s, early 80s, actually, and even into the late 70s, rock stardom was already, I mean, it was beyond. I mean, as a kid, I saw Kiss on record covers and just thought, this is crazy. I mean, Kiss was like, I mean, it was a phenomenon that's hard to describe nowadays. It never even crossed my mind to be a rock star ever as a kid. It wasn't until I heard a certain sound and saw a certain type of musician, and that was a sound and a persona that was rooted in punk rock, that gave a young kid like me, like, whoa, you know, like, maybe I could be a musician. It was inclusive, not exclusive.
Yeah.
So a big part of my career is because I didn't grow up in an era with Led Zeppelin. You know, I wasn't 18. I wasn't like my uncle, you know, who would go see Black Sabbath in 71 or the Led Zeppelin in 1973. I was just being born. So like, I didn't see that kind of excess in rock music. My first concert was the Ramones. And actually Billy Idol was my first concert, Rebel Yell Tour. But then I saw the Ramones. So it's like, you know, my idea of a rock star was like, you know, Johnny Ramone. And I mean, and you talk about an anti-hero. I mean, if there's ever an anti-hero in rock and roll, it's probably Johnny Ramone. So yeah, I get it. And the ideals, you know, and then I got into hardcore punk and Black Flag and Minor Threat and all this stuff and DOA. And then the rock star thing was really just not something that I never wanted to be a rock star. You know, I wanted to be I mean, what I do is what I wanted to do. You know, I just want to play music. I just want to be I'm not quite sure what, I almost feel like someone who's in the work of preservation. I'm trying to preserve a kind of music that I love, which is rock music. You know, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and in a way, it's good not being a poppy rock star because so you can go to the market or to the bars, to the farm, drugstore, you know, without being, you know, annoyed by fans, you know, autographs and you know,
Yeah.
selfies. You
Yeah,
can
no,
have a normal, regular life,
yeah, no,
I
I
suppose.
yeah, for sure. I mean, to a degree, whatever a normal life is, but yes, I do understand what you're saying. And no, I don't, you know, I never, uh, I knew myself enough to know I wouldn't be comfortable with living a life as you know, a huge rock star like these guys that are in like Guns
Yeah.
N' Roses or something like that. I mean, and I don't look. That's what they wanted. That's what they got.
Okay.
Um, that's fine, but not for me. You know.
Drummer Ryan Gutt is also part of your new band, Stoner, which includes your former Chaos partner. I'd like to know how was it to reconnect with Nick?
Oh, it was great. Yeah, it was great. It's always a good time playing music with Nick. Nick and I go way back to when we were kids. We've probably known each other the longest, and of all of our clique of musicians, and so we have a very deep rooted past, and it involves us being young and discovering music together and discovering playing music together. I think I was the first drummer Nick ever played with, and so there's something special about our chemistry. And even though we have our own musical paths, and those paths don't always cross, but when they do, it's always a blast. We always have a good time.
Yeah, that's great, and it's great because you're, you know, taking the two bands together, your own band and the Stoner band, right? I think creatively, it's must be very positive, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Stoner was a band that was it was formed during the pandemic. It was a pandemic project, essentially.
Hmm.
I know that's kind of a cliche term now, but it truly was a project that we put together during the pandemic. And you know, the pandemic was it was a lot of ups and downs, obviously, and we just wanted to have fun, you know, and that's what Stoner was all about. It's all of, we're not taking it super serious. It wasn't a very serious endeavor. It was more about just having a good time, playing rock and roll, not thinking about it too much, and that's what we needed during the pandemic. And then right out of the pandemic, it started to snowball. We just started making records and started touring, and we had a great time.
Did you go through the pandemic very well? You know, mental healthy speaking.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I feel empathy for so many other people and that struggled, and obviously the family members who lost loved ones. I mean, it was a pandemic. There was a terrible time, you know, but
Yeah.
I made the best of it. I had some wonderful experiences during the pandemic, but I had challenge like everybody else. But like anything, we got to you know, make the best of situations, you know, and that's what I did. And so I will look back with equal amounts of fondness and grief, you know.
Thank you again, and yeah, thank you for this time.
Thank you.
Okay, bye bye. Have a great show
Bye.
in Brazil.
Thank you.